Guys, I'm Vulture Culture, and we are shooting out the Oberheim Matrix 6, the last analog synthesizer made by Oberheim in 1985 before Tom Oberheim lost the company. It went bankrupt. Shooting that out against the OG 2DCO vintage legend, the Roland JX-3P. You guys voted on which of the two synths I should shoot out next, and these are the two that you guys picked, and I'm really excited. You can get a Matrix 6 for around $1,000, and you can get a JX-3P. Sorry, it's kind of tucked up underneath here, but that's the nature of having way too many synthesizers. You can get one of these bad boys for about $1,000. So consider that when it comes to the price differential. And we're going to just start off actually by pulling up a little init patch that I created for both of these guys. And over here, we can use, I've got a retroactive PG2K programmer for this synthesizer. And I can just hit the init button. And all we have to do is get the, there we go. So the range should be just about right there. And we should be able to compare. Sounds like there is a slight panning difference on the two of those, which is hilarious. Let's just go ahead and make sure that's right. Okay, I think that's right. Let me know how that sounds. Adam, $700 Canadian. That is a sick deal if everything is working on that synth. Saw Square Sign, welcome to the stream. How's it going? So, we're going to start off right away checking out the oscillators, and we'll come back to the oscillators later, as I like to do on these streams. We're going to just talk about the sawtooth first, then the filter, then come back around to the oscillators. So this is the sound of the sawtooth on the JX-3P. Nice and thick. Matrix 6 over here. A little bit of crackle action. Sorry about that. You can hear a little bit of difference in terms of volume of this low note, I believe. I don't know. What do we think about that? Checking out the mid-range. I love the way the oscillators sound on the Matrix 6. It seems like a little bit brighter. Let's check out the highest note real quick. Pretty much there. I don't think there's really too much of a difference. I'm going to just play a quick chord. Thickness for sure. Synfidel, welcome to the stream. How's it going? So immediately, there's a little bit of a difference. There's a little bit more warmth and fatness on the JX-3P than the Matrix 6. Having said that, I actually prefer the clarity and cleanliness, the balance of warmth and clarity you get on the Matrix 6. So the next step is going to be to bring the cutoff down on this synthesizer. I also have a programmer for this, an Oberheim Matrix X 6000. And all we have to do is put it into this mode, and we can use this programmer as well as this one. What we're going to do is on both synths, bring the cutoff down and bring the envelope up. Make sure I've assigned that correctly and set the attack decay, sustain, and release, or the attack decay and release 250. We haven't assigned it to the volume of the JX-3P, so what's happening there is we're still getting full volume all the way through. We're going to basically do the exact same thing to the Matrix 6. We're going to set the attack, decay, sustain to 0, but the release to 50. So we're going to get a sort of a shape and bring the cutoff down. And we should get something similar. We have to just make sure that we've got the envelope amount all the way up. So you can hear that the envelopes are just slightly faster, but not actually by much. And they're by far not traveling as much as it goes with the with that distance there. So what I want to do actually is increase the cutoff a bit to compensate. So we can get all the way up there. It's kind of sad that that's as far as we don't have as much range to sweep that filter. So to match it, I'm actually going to dial back that VCF amount. I don't know what you're using, Gingy. On my phone, I've got where I type in the chat, and to the right of that, there's a $sign. And that would be where I would go to join the channel, which, by the way, you can do for $5 a month. Get all the cool scum emoji, as well as getting Diodes and Rust for free, my vintage drum sample pack, Inktomi, my chorus and reverb plugin for free, and Neon Chronicles, my patch library for the Roland D50, works on the software and hardware. 50% off, so $10, basically $30 of value for $5. You know, hook a brother up. Oh, I'm sorry, Gingy, I don't know what is going on there. So that's the sound of the filters with no resonance. Let's increase the resonance and see what we get. In this case, I'm going to bring it to 25% on both of them, and we'll see what we get. Hard to guesstimate what exactly 25% is on these synths. We're going to do a nice low C octave. Maybe we'll go E octave. Let's slow it down just a bit more. On the Matrix 6. Ooh. I'm going to go back and slow this down a little bit more too. I think both of them sound really great. So guys, what do we think about the filter so far? I know we're only on 25% resonance, but that's what's going to matter. As we crank it, we're going to get more differences. But to me, the resonance amounts between 25, before you start getting really shrieky, which I want to say is around 2/3 of the way on both of these synths. That's kind of like the usable range of resonance that I'm going to use a lot in tracks. And so to me, they both have this really nice sort of vowel-y character that beats out, unfortunately, other synths we've checked out, like the Alpha Juno, the DX, and even the SX240. Yes, it's a little bit more crunch in there, for sure, with the Matrix, or a little bit more preciseness. We were checking out the Matrix 6 versus GForce Software's OBX that just came out, and there's just this very precise thing to this filter. Really great. Let's increase the resonance to 50% on both of these guys and see what we get. So JX-3P. To me, the resonance at 50% sounded like the resonance on the Matrix 6 at 25 or 30%. So let's see where we're at now. Oh, God. Fuck me up, Oberheim. That sounds so fucking delicious. Oh. Let's slow that down a little more. Oh. Really not comparable, because you'd have to crank the resonance so much more on the JX-3P to kind of get into that vowel-y territory. Here's what that sounds like It's good. It's definitely, yes, that's another way you could do it, Gingy. You could just go to the channel and look at, I think there's a membership tab all on its own. Sorry for that. Chloe, welcome to the stream. Chloe says, don't know about Matrix 6, but the JX-3P is very good for smacking people upside the head. Well, what I can say is they are both big, bad, heavy vintage synths. So, yes. Could be more useful for a direct application for all 12 DCOs, Roy says. Yes. 10 days ago, the Matrix 6 was on the chopping block, and now you're scumming all over it. You know, it's... Oh, just slap that. Let's just make sure that keeps working. Slapping cables. It's funny how it is, you know, the more sometimes you can judge a synth a little too quickly. The filter sounds really good. I think it was just the presets on the Matrix 6 are not my favorite presets of all time. All right, let's try some chords real quick. I'm interested to hear how that sounds. So the big difference that I'm hearing right away is just the massive increase in how far that filter will travel. Now, as we crank them up to, let's say, 75% or so, we can hear JX-3P over here. You're hearing the aftertouch on the Matrix 6 there. I have to be a little careful as I'm standing away from these. The aftertouch is still pretty good on this one. Oh, you can hear there's also velocity, so the harder I hit that. Back over to the JX-3P. Cranking the resonance to 100%. Really interesting. I wouldn't have guessed that that's how this would sound. Really kind of like a bird chirping. Wow, it's kind of mind-boggling. Just Vincent, welcome to the stream. Make sure you have filter key tracking on the 3P to make it sound vowely. Let's go ahead and do that. So all I have to do is just increase this key tracking amount, see if that helps us at all. Oh, that does quite a bit. So we're getting similar sounds. We lose a lot more volume as you increase the filter on the JX-3P. Not really a problem, but just trying to match these can sometimes... Wow. Back over to the JX. They both sound great. Am I crazy for preferring the filter of the Matrix 6? I feel so stupid that I slept on this synth for so long. Back over to the JX. The thickness is pretty crazy. Aquatic says the 3P is about $1,300 in Ontario. Matrix 6 is hard to come by. That's interesting. I never really thought about it, that in Canada, maybe there aren't as many Oberheims. I mean, that would kind of make sense. But you wouldn't necessarily think there would be more of them or JXs or Japanese synths in general in Canada, but it's an interesting thing. We're going to go ahead and assign the envelope 1 to the volume here and create a pad on both of these synthesizers. So to do that, I'm just going to add a little bit more release to both of the amplifier and the filter on the Matrix 6, as well as a little attack and decay, just basically trying to match the shape of the sound on both of these synths. So we're going to play a C minor chord. Remember, the JX-3P has the same filter as a Roland Jupiter 8, which goes for about 25 grand, and you can get one of these for about $1,000. Just think about that, okay? Same idea over here. Whoa, wait. Seems like I need to adjust the filter sustain here all the way back down. Slower the attack decay. Try to get these kind of about right and see if I can nail that. Let's increase the decay for the pad. I think that'll help. Pretty dramatic sounding. We could slow the filter down a little bit, perhaps. But we're in the same neighborhood. That sounds so good on the JX. G sharp major 7 over here. Rich, that is a slider I have actually that is causing the camera to move. It's just one of the many things I've spent the YouTube ad revenue I get on to try to increase the quality of these streams, make them a little bit more fun, dynamic, and interesting, as well, of course, as the lights that change as I play. Right? That's a lot of fun. Need a little more decay out of that. You're getting vertigo. Well, let me know if it's a little too extreme. Music Maestro 123, welcome. Matrix 6 is hard to come by in the UK as well. That's interesting. So you can definitely get these guys. If you don't care about the keyboard, you can get a Matrix 1000, which is essentially the same parts, I believe. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong about that. But the same parts, but in a rack mount form with 1,000 presets, which is pretty awesome. Because I have to say, the presets on the Matrix 6 are not my favorite. There's some okay ones, but they don't, for me, really like set the synth into this category where I'm like, wow, the way it probably could. And by actually making my own sounds, I realized how great this synth can sound. Having said that, the MZ string patch that it opens up with is like the greatest patch of all time. But the Matrix 1000 is a great way to get this Oberheim, vintage, authentic Oberheim sound for $1,000, so about the same price as the JX-3P. And you can get those all day long. And you can use a programmer, a computer programmer, to actually do that. Saw Square Sign says, I love the JX-3P and added this series circuit MIDI kit to extend the MIDI capabilities. Talk to me about that. What's that do? Go get some Dramamine. Yeah. Favorite knobs from the PG200 to my MPC Live to Q-Link controls. That's super interesting. I didn't know that was a possibility, actually. So I'm going to play another chord here just to see. Man, that sounds good. It's interesting how when you play a big chord, let me see, this was the chord. We're going to just slow down that attack a little bit But wow. You really do get that Tom Sawyer type sound out of it. And I would like to say too, by the way, we're listening to one oscillator per voice on both of these synths, and they sound fucking incredible. Dubstation says the only real difference is the clock source used in the 6 is discrete and in the 1000 is shared. Aquatic says Matrix 1000 still about $1,300. That is expensive in Ontario. You can get them. The prices I look up are with shipping. I always talk about synth prices with shipping because it's sort of irrelevant to talk about synth prices, but then like, if you're going to have to pay $400 in shipping on a $1,000 synth, that's a non-trivial difference, right? So let's go ahead and add another oscillator into the equation back over here on the JX-3P. I'm going to bring the oscillator mix 50-50. Make sure we're on the right range, and we're going to detune this shit out of this. Dial the resonance back just slightly, but increase. So I like this one with a little bit more bass. And the thing about a lot of Roland synths, or actually just a lot of synthesizers, especially vintage ones, as you crank the resonance, you lose bass, which isn't a bad thing. This patch on its own sounds a little thin compared to the Matrix 6, but that's because we're listening to it in an unnatural environment. We're just listening to this on its own. That will never happen in a piece of music, more or less. It's almost always going to have some drums and bass and leads over the top of it. So it's not bad to lose a little bass on a polysynth. But anyways, it's a really nice glassy character to this synthesizer that I really enjoy as you crank the resonance. Going over to the Matrix, I need to adjust the DCO mix, put it in the center, and see if we have something that sounds kind of like that. That's about right, but what we need is to detune the oscillator. So let's try and see if we can find... So we can kind of compare the difference of the detune on these two synthesizers. Really wonderful harmonics in there. Let the volume get a little crazy. Okay, let's turn it up a little here and see what we get. You can hear that, how that aftertouch is a little touchy, no pun intended. Walter, welcome to the stream. It says, as soon as you hear the OB and you're instantly thinking about 1984. Yeah, I understand for sure. That is, of course, such an iconic part of the Matrix, or I'm sorry, the Oberheim resonance sound. I don't know enough about how they actually build filters. By the way, can we have a little scum cheers in the chat? I need to intoxicate with a little, daddy needs a little gin when we're playing with the synthesizers. So can I get a scum cheers to all you wonderful people hanging out tonight? Oh yeah. Bitter. Ricky, welcome. I'm here too. So I'm going to just go back and forth on these two real quick, play some stuff, and you guys let me know what you think as far as, so far, which of the two synths do you think is better? What the hell is the next chord in that chord sequence? I think it's, nope. Okay, so let's try that one more time. It's fun playing with synths live on the internet. I'm going to make this a little easier on me too. I'm going to increase the release on both of these guys a bit. There we go, and just increase the release on here. So we'll try this on this guy. They both sound really good. I mean, it's actually kind of difficult to compare the two. I think that there is something to the filter resonance on the Matrix 6 that I'm liking. I just love that Curtis filter squelchy, growly, vocally thing. But the JX-3P sounds incredible too. It's really hard to compare the two, honestly. Dubstation Zero says the M6 sounds more interstellar. Ricky says too close to call. Roy says the original Emacs looks so cool. The whole synth in italic. Yeah. Rich says put your VCF release just a tad farther than the VCO release and you'll get that iconic sound you're after you release the keys with the Matrix 6. So by VCO release, I'm assuming you mean the VCA release. So I'll go ahead and do that real quick and just increase that so we can hear how that sounds. Yeah, very cool. Tony, welcome. Obi's darker, Roland lighter. I like the Roland because I make dance, trance, jungle, blah, 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 etc. Yes, so... yeah, in that case, I would say that, you know, again, when you're shooting stuff out and you're listening to the synths in solo, we're just hearing one synthesizer or the other. The ear is almost always going to go to, the louder synth, which is why I try to volume match them as close as I can. And then you're also going to prefer sounds that are bassier because it's going to fill out the full spectrum better. But then what do you do when you go into a track? You got to cut out all that bass. So a lot of the times when you're actually listening to, when you're picking a synth for a track and you need a pad, I would recommend a synth that doesn't necessarily have too much bass because otherwise you're going to spend a lot of time filtering that out and everything. Roy asked, so the 3P has a hidden Matrix mod? Not that I'm aware of. I mean, so a couple of things to distinguish between these synths that I maybe should have covered at the top, but I try not to talk too much in the beginning. If it only came down to features and what is possible as far as modulation and all of that, there's really not a comparison between the JX-3P and the Matrix 6. The Matrix 6 has 3 envelopes per voice. The JX-3P only has 1. So you actually, if you want to add some attack to the amplifier, it's going to the filter as well. Well, actually, you can set it in gate mode, but if you want to do any sort of pad or anything like that, you're going to need to send the envelope to the VCA, and that's going to essentially tie the VCA and VCF together, the movement of them. Whereas we can do a lot of stuff. We've also got like ramp generators, multiple LFOs per voice, polyphonic LFOs. This is a monophonic LFO. There's so much going on with the Matrix 6 that's really not touchable over here. We've got native pulse width modulation. You can sort of do pulse width mod with one oscillator by using the sync on the JX3P. But what you don't get necessarily is just native pulse width mod. So we could have different, or we could have pulse width mod on both voices here, whereas over here we'd have to use only one if we wanted to do that. I can't remember if the Matrix 6 has a sync function in there. It might. But we do have a unison mode. Having said that, it's kind of interesting how the unison is implemented. We do not have a unison mode over on the JX3P. So as some people said before the stream, there's an argument to be made that maybe I should have been comparing a JX8P, which has more envelopes. It also has velocity and aftertouch. There's no velocity and aftertouch on the JX3P, and there is on the Matrix 6. So you might be thinking to yourself, wait a second. This is starting to appear to be the sloppiest choice of synthesizer comparison videos of all time. But I'm not so sure because, for instance, the JX3P versus the JX8P, objectively, if we're just talking about filters, you've got all of those things that are missing on the 3P. Unison mode, velocity aftertouch, multiple envelopes, and yet people pay more for the 3P. And it's because of the inherent sound of this synthesizer is so good. And for what it's worth, when you're going for 80s style strings, leads, brass, all of that stuff, right? You don't really need a lot of velocity. Aftertouch is nice. I love playing with aftertouch, but it's not necessary. One of my favorite synths of all time. It's probably just off camera here, the Korg Poly 6. None of that stuff either. Yeah, so it's interesting. Let me go ahead and check out some of the chat here. Dubstation says, any one of the JX series plus an M6, M6R, or M1000 is such a great starting point for any vintage synth collection. So approachable financially for two of the classics from the big spendy companies. Yes. Nell Nick, welcome to the stream. Is there a JX3P emulation in the System 8? Not that I'm aware of. Could be wrong about that. Let me know. Ricky says the 3P shares the same great analog filters and VCAs as the Juno and even the Jupiter. Correct. So it's got the same filters as the Juno 6 and 60 and the Jupiter 8. Juno 106 actually has a different filter. So if you're really for that Roland Jupiter 8 sound, that $25,000 vintage synth sound, you might get there closer with something like a JX3P. It's got two voices per, two oscillators per voice. So Juno only has one, right? So this is actually probably, in some sense, the closest thing you're going to get to an 8P, other than maybe a Jupiter 6. Now, my understanding is that the impedance and the way that the filter is implemented in the 3P is different than the 8P. And they actually make a mod for the 3P, which allows you to sort of fix that or make it sound more like a Jupiter 8, which I think is super cool. Let's see. Tony says velocity is overrated. I somewhat agree there. Yeah, great sequencer on the JX3P. I love it. And you also have a stereo chorus on the JX3P. So let me just kick that on real quick. I think it's this button. Yeah. So, I mean, that's something you get on the JX3P that's non-existent on the Oberheim. There's no chorus or anything like that. Not really fair to compare them, and nowadays you could just use something like my free plugin, Inktomi, which the link is in the description of this video. If you can run VST3s, then you can use the plugin completely free for a limited time. The chorus is amazing. I want to go check out making a more of a brass type sound and more of like a darker brass type sound. I think that would be fun. So we're going to bring this down and bring the resonance down, volume down. really nice. Now, of course, that's affecting the volume and the filter at the same time, so we'll try to keep that kind of close. I'm going to bring the envelope amount down so we get a little darker sound. Now, it's going to be harder to match that over here just because I'm going to have to go back and forth, but we'll try to sort of get closer to that, maybe, with a little bit of this action here. And then bring the resonance way down and see what we've got. Let's bring that filter attack down a little bit. Same thing with the, basically can cheat a little bit because we've got multiple envelopes, so we can add, we can keep the sound a little bit more present on the Matrix 6. See how you can get that extra attack? That's not going to be possible over here exactly. Bring that release down. Oh, that sounded so good over there. That sounds great. That's over here. Probably bring the volume down a bit. Oh, it sounds so fucking tight, doesn't it? Just the speed of that. Slow it down a little. I guess I gotta add some attack here too, or else it's gonna just get... slowed it. We got to speed it back up a little. Let's see. It's very good. So now to my ears, we can really hear a difference. Let me know what you guys think. Now on this brass example, I'm sort of leaning a little bit more towards the JX-3P. There's just this wonderful warmth and mid-range to the synthesizer. You guys let me know what you think, of course. We'll try to play that. Over to the Matrix 6, we'll try something similar, you know? Needs a lot more release, Nick. But they both sound really good. So what do we think about the comparison? Aquatic says, yeah, the brass sounds really awesome on the JX-3P. Nell says, I just checked, the System 8 has Jupiter 8 106 and JX-3P stock. Well, that's awesome. I'm particularly, like, if I had one of those plug-out synthesizers, I would probably load the Roland SH2 into it. I think that synth sounds incredible, and their emulation of it would be interesting. I could do a comparison video of like Roland Cloud versus the actual vintage stuff, but I'm not that interested in doing that unless people really want me to. I guess I don't want to totally torch any possible friendship I might have with Roland one day. You'll know I'll do anything for money. So yeah, in this brass example, I think they both have their advantages. It's actually surprising how similar you can make these sound. I'm going to increase the decay a bit. Yeah, there's more of like a low-mid focus on the JX-3P. And by the way, that's true comparing it with the JX-8P. The JX-8P is going to have a much brighter sound. The Matrix 6 is really in that neighborhood, right? Wow, it's just so clear. Just really incredible. So I think maybe the next step would be to compare what the better synth might be for bass lines. So one thing I noticed about both of these synths, it would be interesting to compare. Let's go ahead and bring the attack all the way down, sustain to about 50%, and the release all the way down. Ooh, it sounds good. Let's bring that decay though. Like a little bit in there. We have a high pass filter on this synthesizer. We can actually filter stuff out if we wanted. And unlike on a Juno, it is fully, what's the word for that? I was going to say slidable, but that's incredibly low IQ. Basically, it's fully adjustable. On a Juno, you're limited to, I think, 4 positions, and the lowest one actually increases the low end, which might be true on the JX-3P. I'm not sure. This is like kind of a basis for a good... We're going to bring the second oscillator up an octave, too. Actually sounds really good, kind of meaty if I bring the resonance all the way out. If I bring the fine tuning and get it really tight, we'll get kind of close to that Juno sub-oscillator sound. The same thing over here, we'll just kind of try to bring this into that territory. Bring the resonance all the way down. Bring the, so I actually don't know how to do it on the programmer, but if I just look over here and see that parameter number 10 is DCO frequency for DCO2. So I'm just going to go ahead and set that to 12, and that should give us the same sort of... Bring the cutoff down here. Interesting the way the cutoff differences are. I mean, you can just get these like crazy... You can hear how much the filter is just more focused on the low mids with the JX-3P, whereas you can get these really bright, pretty attacky sounds. That's not, as far as I can tell, really that possible over here. Sounds great though. One more thing I need to do is bring the detune down over here. Just to try to get that same. Let's try again over here, maybe tighten up the decay. The lack of the envelope depth on the JX-3P is becoming my bugbear about this synth. That you just don't have that same range that you can get out of the Matrix 6. Having said that, if we bring this down a little and, you know, let's try bringing this down. Yeah, it's interesting, the differences there. For some reason, I can't seem to... Oh, I know why. I don't have this in the right mode here. Let me go ahead and bring that in. Bring that down. It's amazing how much of the tighter envelopes on the Matrix 6. Not that these can't go very tight. Let's see here. Let me catch up here. Gigi says they're naming their cat's middle naming to me. It's very flattering. Thank you very much. Nell says the Matrix sounds a lot like my OBX8. How similar are they? Well, I don't know that I would say that they are that similar in certain regards. But the Matrix 6 certainly, I don't know, I'm sure some other people in the chat could probably say this better than I, but the way I would say it is that the Matrix 6 has that Oberheim essence. However, if you're really looking for that Oberheim OBX or OBXA sound, you're not really going to get that exact thing out of the Matrix or even Expander in Matrix 12 series. If you listen to demos of those synthesizers, you'll hear that they have a sort of a characteristic all to themselves, which I love. They're a little bit more, I might think of them as, and I've never shot out a Matrix versus an OB series, so take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt. But when I listen to demos, to me, the Matrix has a more hollow sound, but can sound really awesome and beautiful, and maybe a little bit more of that Curtis cold sound, I guess is what I would say. But I love that. So AX60, Chroma Polaris, also called cold synths that sound incredible. So it's not really, to me, something that I don't like. I wouldn't be surprised if shooting this out against one of those synths if I actually preferred the Matrix sound, but it's supposed to sound like an Oberheim though. And there's actually some patches I found, and I think they're from the Matrix 1000, that emulate the patches of the OBXA exactly. So that'd be a fun one to know. Decisive Koala, welcome to the stream. The 3P has a magical filter. Walter says a Jupiter 8 shootout, Real versus Varios versus ACB versus ABM versus Arturia and Tal J8 could be interesting, but it's so subjective. Yo, August 1, thank you for becoming a subscriber. Too much for a live test. Yeah, I'd probably have to do one at a time or do it as a video. Zachy, welcome. Hey, why don't I tell you I grabbed an SY99 because of you? Well, then that's awesome. Thank you. And Dubstation Zero in the chat's the reason I got one. Bought the extra memory boards for it. Never thought I'd spend $250 for 2.5 megabytes in 2023, but here I am, and I'm in love with the SY99. Well, I'm so happy that you enjoy that synth. It's one of my favorite synths. Such a cool instrument and totally slept on. So I hopefully you got it for a good deal. $250 for 2.5 megabytes though, man. That's crazy. That probably means you can load your own waveforms in and everything, like extra space for that. Okay, so we've sort of shot out a couple of different things on this synthesizer. Let's check out the metal mode on this synth. So off, it sounds like metal mode on. Not really too much of a difference, and then sync. Now, I think there is, let me go look over here, some capacity in here, but I don't think I have. I've got like sort of frequency mod stuff where I can do cross mod, which is basically what the metal mode is. So if I take, put it back into metal mode and adjust the tuning here. We get these sorts of sounds. Sounds super cool. Adjusting this further. Adjusting sync. Of course, to get that sort of sound, you have to use the pitch envelope, which I could do, or I could just actually be a punk-ass bitch and just pull up the preset so you can hear what this sounds like on the synth. So I believe that's something that's actually not possible on the Matrix 6. Please let me know if I'm wrong. I wouldn't be surprised if I get this wrong, but... just really great sync sound. Sounds really good. One thing over on the Matrix over here, so if we're in this mode, we could do the same thing with cross modulation. Let me see where it is on this programmer here. Oh, it does look like we have a sync switch on the over here. Yeah, we've got also, I forgot, yes, this is a thing. So we've got DCO sync, and we actually have different amounts of it, which is crazy. So this is off. As we increase it, you'll hear a difference. Rich corrects me that, yes, in fact, the Matrix has sync. And yes, I just discovered that, or remembered that. So that is there. Let me see if I can find the FM to oscillator on this programmer. This programmer does not have everything. It's just sort of got like the stuff you'll use most often. VCF key mode, VCF level. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to go into the actual synth here and do it by hand. So we could do frequency modulation by LFO1, so that'd be your vibrato. Pulse width mod is routed to LFO2, which is nice. We've got sync. We can change the waveforms. How do we do cross mod in this synth? I don't know if I'm seeing it. It doesn't look like it's there. Let's look at the modulation matrix. Let's see if I can take an oscillator and route it. So a source... We have envelopes, LFOs, vibrato. We've got ramps and shit, which is totally like more than you will ever see on something like a Roland synth from this era anyways. Tracking generator, keyboard gate, velocity, release velocity. So this is... release velocity is a feature they put in Korg's wave state. Just think about that for a second. Like a modern synth has release velocity, and that actually existed on the Matrix 6. So what that is we're all familiar with this idea of like how hard you hit the keys is going to be the velocity, right? But how hard you release the keys as a velocity also kind of crazy to think about. Aftertouch pedal. It looks like I don't have a way to route the oscillator, one of the oscillators to the other oscillator, which is what I would need to be able to create some sort of cross mod. So Rich or whoever else is here, let me know if I'm missing it. I'll go check the chat real quick. Rich says the OBX8 has incredible sync. I totally believe that. So it's looking like there isn't a way to do it on the Matrix 6, which is interesting. But what you can do on the Matrix 6, which for me is life, we're going to create a little bit more of a sweep again. And we're going to increase the resonance. And then the biggest thing is that we can do filter FM on this synth. So this is impossible on the XP at all. So you start getting this crazy type of sound. This is FM all the way up. Really crazy sounding. As we crank the resonance, you get insane. Now, going back into the attack, bringing that down. Let's increase release. This is starting to remind me of POB's dirty brass sound. We'll just add the smallest amount of attack to that. Maybe we'll need a little to the amplifier as well. This is a feature on the AX62, and that's the type of stuff that makes people go like, oh, that synthesizer sounds cold. Doesn't sound cold, it's frequency modulation of the filter. And it sounds awesome. Are you kidding me? Yeah. Let's see. Dub, I didn't understand that one. POB Dirty Brass is 2 digital oscillators. Mighty Pinto, welcome to the stream. How's it going, my brother? How's it been? Yeah, so yeah, of course, POB sound is going to be with those noise engineering incredible digital oscillators, but I just meant that it's sort of taking us into that territory. You can hear I previously routed Aftertouch to the filter, and that's a thing that sets the Matrix 6 apart. If you're not familiar with this, we say modulation matrix, and that's actually named after, I'm not sure if Oberheim was the first to come up with that, but they certainly popularized the idea of a modulation matrix. And what that is we've got 20 different sources and 32 destinations and 10 modulation slots, and we can actually set up different things, which is pretty incredible. Like, the capacity of sounds you can make with the Matrix 6 far exceeds anything that can be done on the JX-3P if we're just talking about what can be done. For me, that's not always what I care about when it comes to vintage synthesizers, because if I want to get super crazy and modulation-y, the software makes that so easy nowadays, you know. But if you want to be like a sound designer's dream, the Matrix 6 is pretty much there. Back over to this synth, I mean, I'm going to try to make it as crazy as I can where I don't hear anything. Sounds like maybe one of the cables got a little scratchy. I don't know what I did here. Let's just shift initialize. I don't know what it went wrong there. The resonance is so much more gentle. It's got such a beautiful sound to it. Now let's try to fuck it up with a little bit of envelope mod here. So what we're listening to is this oscillator's just following that. And I want to set it to maybe like a 5th or something so we get some sort of weird value. That's a tritone. That's a fucked up value. But once we put it into metal mode, we're getting a little cross mod, but not a lot. Oh, God, that's nasty. getting almost some cross mod type. What am I thinking of? Like steel drum type sounds out of that. Putting it into sync mode, we might get some more useful stuff. Range is kind of helpful. That's a way we're sort of getting a little bit dirtier of a sound out of that. Wow, that's a beautiful one. That's almost like an E-piano type sound with the sync. So that's gorgeous, but not what I wanted necessarily. Like, I kind of want a little... Pretty good down there. Yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely an interesting sort of sound that we can get, but it's not taking us all the way over here. To me, that is just like cyberpunk as fuck. Delicious. I just love that dirtiness that you can get with that filter FM. That's just a beautiful sound. I can listen to filter FM all day. But for some people, it's not their thing as much, you know. It's I can understand that as well. Mighty says that's some blood dragon shit right there. Yes, sir. Yeah, so comparing the two of these, I think has been interesting. I want to try one more thing, which is to just check out the LFOs real quick. Oh yes, Nick, if you can talk about your incredible, what is it, Novation Mark 02. That is a cool way to control a bunch of vintage synthesizers with one controller. I had someone asking about that in a video today, a comment. I forget which one it was, or maybe a post or something. Let's go ahead and just reinitialize this patch real quick. So, initialize, please. Cool. Oscillator, let's see. We'll just bring it back to 1. We should go ahead and check out the square wave too, by the way. And we can just go to patch select, and we'll go to 0, 1, and then 26, and we should be right back to a sawtooth wave. So, and all we have to do is go to DCO2 wave and change that over. Oh, and there we go. So we can check out the square wave on both of these synths. Interesting, the difference there. Could be a shape thing too. That's a little thing in here that's interesting. So we have different shapes and pulse width. So let's make sure that's all the way down. I mean, I don't really think I could tell the difference there. Little intermodular distortion on the JX-3P. Could be my recording setup, not the synth itself. I mean, they're so similar on the pulse wave as to almost be identical. I mean, it's actually kind of crazy to think that two synths that are from different manufacturers, different continents, can sound so similar. Of course, the one, again, like sort of a trick that's up the Matrix 6 sleeve that we don't have as an option over here is we could go to LFO 2 to pulse width 2, and I think this will do it. Hey, thanks for subscribing, Nell Nick. Yeah, so we can control that, and then we control the LFO to speed, which is, yeah, over here, so we can slow that down. So that's pretty incredible. Now, I forgot what the exact trick is, but we actually can do something similar to get I think we use sync and adjust the tuning of the second DCO on the JX-3P. There is a trick. You can look it up. I forgot what it is off the top of my head, but it's super cool. But anyways, what I really wanted to check out while we're over here on the square wave is just what can be done with the LFO. So I'm going to increase the amount of the LFO and assign an LFO. And we can just hear, like, that's it at its max. We've only got 3 options. We've got sine, square, and random. Sine wave. Let's see how far we can take the rate. Not very fast. I mean, pretty useful, I suppose. I'm going to remove the pulse width modulation, and we're going to just route the LFO to DCO2. So let's just go do that real quick. And you can hear there's already quite a bit, a different amount. So, and let's see how fast we can go. So again, you know, it's one of those interesting things. The Matrix 6 can just go further than the JX-3P can in almost every category. Even in the things that they both do, the Matrix 6 goes a little bit further. which is good and bad. I mean, there's something about the JX-3P which is like, it's almost impossible to make a sound that isn't gorgeous on it. Whereas the Matrix 6, and I think this is a problem with VSTs, if you can go too far, you can sort of... It's a thing. Let's see here. Dub says sync and LFO map to oscillator 2 FM. So let's go ahead and give that a shot real quick. I'm going to route the LFO 2 to the second oscillator, and put it into sync mode. Actually, quite beautiful sounding pulse width modulation. If I put the range up, you could get a even... pretty damn good pulse width modulation, actually. I didn't really realize how great that could sound. Going up another octave... It sounds great. Of course, we could take the LFO down a bit. I actually quite like the sound at one octave up. And let's see if we can still detune it. I don't think we can. Yeah, so that would be the one difference is that once you put the oscillators into sync, what's happening is on any synthesizer, when you sync the oscillators, they can no longer be out of tune. They are in sync with each other. That's part of what makes the sound. And as you adjust the tuning of the second oscillator, it affects the timbre of the first. In this case, that means you can kind of not get quite as lush as you can on the Matrix 6. So I think the story of these two synthesizers for me is that you can have this sort of, let's see here, I'm going to have to go over to the main computer to do what I want to do. But the story of these two synths for me is the JX-3P, which came from 1983, by the way. One of the first synthesizers ever to have MIDI, which makes it very useful too, because it's just such a, incredible instrument. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's nice when vintage synths have MIDI. You could get around it sometimes or put a MIDI kit in, but it's expensive. It's just great when they come with stock MIDI, although the implementation's not great. Matrix 6, on the other hand, is sort of the death knell of the analog synthesizer. I mean, this was Oberheim, one of the true American greats, and this is on its way out, right? This is the end of the story for Oberheim. And it was basically like a kitchen sink synthesizer in the sense that they were like, let's throw as much shit into this as we can. They threw even more into the expander and Matrix 12s, but those are very expensive synthesizers. This one you can still get very cheaply. So considering the price difference between the two, I can see why the Matrix 6 costs what it does. I think it really sounds great, but there's something to be said for the simplicity. And I mean, this has a lot going on. It's got the high pass filter. It's got cross mod that's not there. It's got the great analog chorus, Just a crazy amount of warmth and character to it. And just, it sounds gorgeous. Whereas the Matrix 6 has more or less what to me feels like a more flexible interface. It's obviously, you don't have the knobs and faders on either of them if you buy them stock. You can get the programmer for the JX-3P from Retroactive for about $550 or so, and I think it's worth every penny. We didn't even talk about like the scratch patch generator and all that cool stuff in that. I've done videos on that before. Matrix 6, programmers for this are fucking expensive. And they don't even cover everything the way a retroactive programmer would. So for me, the Matrix 6 is probably more one of those things where you're going to have to actually dig in and get used to programming it directly from the front panel, which is what it is, right? It's not as much fun as maybe other things, you know, you could spend your time with. And in an era of VSTs and everything, programming on a membrane panel, going to like parameter number and looking here and typing it in, and then value number, typing it in, that can be the type of thing that for some people is a total creativity killer. So for the same $1,500, the JX-3P will get you, that is $1,000 JX-3P plus $1,500 or a $500 programmer from Retroactive will get you much more instant, fast, beautiful workflow results. Matrix 6, you're probably going to have to nurse a bit. And you can get something like the Oberheim Matrix X that I have here. But even that is a slim down, doesn't have everything. Kind of annoying because you've got to select the different buttons to get to different parameters. It's not like one knob per function at all. It's kind of like one knob per, 12 functions, you know? So you've only got the 6 knobs. It still tries to cover a lot, but the Matrix 6, even with that 6x12 layout, there's still so much more hiding in the Matrix 6, especially the modulation matrix, which you will have to type in manually. So if what you're trying to do is have that like hands-on hardware synth experience of, you know, really, interacting with the instrument in real time and adjusting parameters as you're going, I think it's pretty hard to beat the JX-3P. That's been sort of our reigning champion. Over here on the Matrix 6, though, I have to admit that I prefer the oscillator sound, I prefer the filter sound, and that's a big deal. I was kind of thinking that I was going to prefer all of the functions and flexibility of the Matrix 6, but prefer the raw tones of JX-3P. For me, I think the Matrix 6 sounds incredible. But what really matters is what you guys think. So I want to know, what do you guys think about these synthesizers? Do you think I'm crazy? Do you think I'm wrong about these? I want to know. So I'm going to pull up this and ask you guys. Let's add a poll, and I think the poll needs to be. Sorry, I'm typing here. What do you think the question should be? Dollar for dollar, which is the better value synthesizer in terms of sound and flexibility features? It's kind of a convoluted question, but that is what it is. Or the... I'm spelling shit wrong. Alright, let me just make sure I got that about right. Dollar for dollar, which is the better value synthesizer in terms of sound and flexibility and features? The Roland JX-3P or the Oberheim Matrix 6? I'm curious to see what you guys have to say. Because I think that's an important thing here for talking. And I always say this, and I didn't say it this stream, but for me, I'm going to go grab that alcohol real quick. I need a little sip. Daddy needs a sip. The reason I do these streams is they help me really understand what's a good and a bad synth. I mean, Nick was sort of teasing me earlier that like now I love the Matrix 6, and the reason is because of these versus streams. When you're hearing a synth all on its own, it's easy to sort of like lose context. But when you hear it against something else, you sort of get this idea of like, oh, okay, yeah, it's got X, Y, or Z to it that really sets it apart. I honestly wasn't even thinking the JX-3P would do as well. I've always been sort of like a DW8000 Alpha Juno Quai K3 guy. That's my like trinity. But the truth is that the JX-3P and Oberheim Matrix are it seems to be for everybody the superior synths. Yeah. Dubstation Zero says the LFO sync trick also works on hybrids like the K3, the DSS1, DW8000, and SQ80. It's good to know. I need to remember that. Avanish Patel, welcome to the stream. PG2K is $675. Prices might have gone up, but also I've been talking with Rob from Retroactive, and he's had a recent problem with Shopify where it's been showing the wrong prices to people because it's doing some sort of conversion behind the scenes, but that conversion is actually showing the wrong currencies. And he's had an incredible amount of abandoned carts recently to the point where he's worried he's about going out of business over the past few months because of Shopify. So I'm not saying you're wrong, Avanish. I'm just saying that definitely double check that. Actually, I feel ethically compelled just to make sure and see what he's actually selling one of these for. Because it was about 500 before. 550, 575, I would have guessed. Let me see here. Yeah, it does look like a 675 to me, so I hope I'm not misrepresenting Rob's products, but even at 675, the thing about programmers, and this is what everybody kind of has this like hurdle with it, where they're like, okay, programmers shouldn't cost as much as the synths, for instance, right? And I think that's not the right way to think about it. I just think of the total price of the synth plus the programmer. So JX-3Ps, I think last time I was checking, you can get them for like $900, right? So that puts it right about $1,575. As of this video, it could be a slightly different number, but let's say it's $1,575. You know, humor me for a second. If it is $1,575, that's a very compelling, good deal on a 2 DCO vintage synthesizer with the Jupiter 8 filter. If you just think of it all together, if you think of it individually, yeah, some of Retroactive's programmers are not cheap, but they do so much. So let's see. Lots of people are saying both. We'll let the poll go a little bit longer. Aquatic says that Canada, the Matrix 6 is quite expensive. Yeah, I haven't really looked into it. Gigi says the missing link is SysX automation, a way to record and play back the parameter tweaks and adjustments in real time or overdub, like a MIDI looper for vintage hardware, like the Korg automation. So the thing is that for most vintage synths, that's just going to be out of the question. Sadly, I'm sure there's some that can be done, but with synths like the JX-3P and Matrix 6, they are just not designed for real-time control like that. That kind of concept didn't really come around, like the idea that you would want to be doing real-time parameter changes over MIDI. I don't think people were really thinking that back then. I think they were just thinking that you might use something to program with, like a PG200 or something like that. Rich donated his Korg DW8000 to his tech. That was very sweet of you. Widow, welcome to the stream. Love my JX-3P. Bought it with a Jupiter 9091 for 200 and the Jupiter 8 for 450. That is painful to hear, but awesome. Euro DJ, hello. How's it going? Let's see. Aquatic says, I'm seeing a desktop OB6 for not that much more than a Matrix 6. Yeah, so that's tough. I mean, I'm a vintage guy, but even there, I'm like, okay, the OB6 is just such a powerful synthesizer, and to be able to have those different filters, I think is huge. You know, and then to get there with vintage hardware, you're going to be looking at an Oberheim expander, which is going to cost more like $6,000. So, I mean, it's just not really worth it, Aquatic. Gigi says the programmers that record automation that really bring modern features to vintage gear. But again, that's the thing about, even if you could record the automation live, it wouldn't be able to be sent into that synthesizer without issues. So like on my JX, if you're sending it MIDI, I think the Kiwi mod fixes this. Someone else was talking about a MIDI mod that fixes this, but it's just like, it's going to glitch out. It can't handle that much information. And things like filter sweeps don't sound that good. Now, Nick could jump in here with the NRPM, and that's for sure a thing, but you know, in general, vintage synths were just not set up for that, so you get these really pretty bad filter sweep sounds. Gingy says, Alesis MMT8 had automation recording. That's awesome. So, I mean, that's a thing. That's a sequencer drum machine? Yeah. Yeah. Rich says, we don't want you to hold back for fear of manufacturer retributions. Tell us like it is. We don't need another Bo Beats. So, I mean, I like watching Bo's videos. I don't know. I'm not aware that he has that reputation. I am not afraid of being a dick about a product. When it's a small company, and I believe in what Retroactive is doing, what Rob is doing, I think he's making incredible stuff. So I want to be sure that I'm doing a good job representing that. And in my opinion, Nick might disagree with me, and that's okay. I mean, that's the beautiful thing. I think Retroactive makes stuff that is at such a high quality and interfaces so smoothly with whatever synthesizer that you have, that there's no alternative that's as good. Now, you could get the Novation Mark 02 or whatever and use one of those, and that's probably just as good in a lot of ways. But like the scratch patch generator, where you can just get these infinite patches in different categories, whether you want a synth brass or synth strings, leads, dance sounds, bass sounds, electric keyboard, electric piano, all of those different sounds that you get, where they're not patches stored in there, although in my programmer and those two, they have the memory cards. So that's part of why it's more expensive too, guys. That's something to think about. It's not just a programmer. It also allows you to store hundreds of patches. So that's another advantage. So that's why I love what Rob and Retroactive is doing. I, for a long time, slept on the Matrix 6, and I'm sleeping on the Novation, so Dubstation might convince me to completely go to that side of the thing and just have one programmer for everything. It's certainly a value proposition because they're not that expensive, so I should probably just do that. I should buy one, set it up, and get it going. I'm sure Nick would help me out. Yeah, it's just one of those things, you know. Now, Nick says, was it the Matrix 1000 that wasn't even really an Oberheim Gibson, right? Well, here's the thing. I would say the OB12, which was the virtual analog synthesizer put out by Gibson later on, that to me isn't an Oberheim. That was designed, I think, by someone from the company, Oberheim, but essentially it's just not going to sound like an Oberheim, right? The Matrix 1000 was put out after Oberheim lost the company. It might have been before it was acquired by Gibson. I'm not 100% sure on the timeline. It doesn't really matter. The point is, Matrix 1000 is essentially a Matrix 6, aside from the way the clock is divided. And so from that perspective, it was basically just trying to evergreen a product that was made by Oberheim. So it's just a different version of the Matrix 6R, a less programmable version. Until you introduce, modern programmers, you can program it just as easily using something like Patchbase or controller. So that's really awesome. That's a great value for people if they want to get the sound of the Matrix 6 for $500 less and then just program it from their computer or something. I think that's a great way to go. Nick says I need to get the Tontech mod. Yeah, I agree. I need to make it happen. Yes. Yeah. Aquatic says, you play any games these days? I started playing Alan Wake 2. Trippy, beautiful looking game. I'm not. I wish I was. I have not had time to play a video game in a long time. Even when I was playing them on this channel, that was the only time I had to play video games. And, right now I'm developing Synaptic Echoes, the next Vulture Culture product, which is going to be just a vast library of textures, sounds, vintage synthesizer samples, just so much going into this library, and it's all based around the Roland RE501. So it's got this vintage, spacey, retro, sort of sci-fi aesthetic. That's what I'm working on right now. as well as like jobs. Like this week I've been doing a lot of mastering for one of the bands that I master for. So just with everything between that, starting a new job, I've been very busy. But I absolutely think that the Alan Wake game would be something I'd be playing if I had the time. Let me catch up with the chat here. Casio Chaos Theory, welcome to the stream. Yeah, the MIDI is very primitive. Yes, the Kiwi mod addresses that, but it also changes it. So Espen Croft would say that it changes the spirit of the synth. Maybe, I don't want to be putting words in his mouth. So there's always that interesting thing about how much do you want to modify a vintage synthesizer before it starts to lose the character. I think the MIDI is a major difference though, or it would make it more useful. For some people it's not a question, it's like that's their workflow. I am still a keyboard player, even though I'm bad at it. I still like playing the keys, and so I'm not doing a lot of real-time tweaking. For a lot of people though, that's the much more common way to do electronic music nowadays, and so I understand just being like, it's got to have fucking MIDI, you know, like it's got to be able to work. Yeah. So Shinji says it works with a JX-10. Rich said, Dr. Mick stole your camera idea. I saw his Rolly demo and saw that rolling camera. You're a trendsetter. Hey, if he did, that's awesome. I stole it from somebody else. They weren't doing synths, but I didn't come up with it. But I definitely think that it's worth, it hopefully adds a little something to the stream. That was always the goals, just to try to make these streams as interesting as possible, because it can get a little dry when we're talking about the history of synthesizers or the nuances of different chips inside of them, but I still love that. So Zaki or Zacy says, I still don't have an analog polysynth. The closest I have is a matriarch. I really want a memory moog. The mod for individual voice outs is so compelling. So you can do individual voice outs modified on a memory moog. Memory moogs like to break. Just think about that before you get one. They're famous for breaking, and they're also about 15 grand. It's probably a better first, even if you're going vintage, probably a better first vintage analog polysynth there. So yeah. Now Nick says, how do you feel the GeForce OBX or other VSTs sound compared to the X8? Well, I don't have an X8, but last week I did a stream comparing the GeForce OBX to the Matrix 6, and I thought it sounded very good. Most people in that chat, I think it was about a 66% decision. By the way, I want to just read this out. The Oberheim Matrix 6 just barely won out at 55% over the JX-3P, but I'd say almost everybody voted for the JX-3P, so it's pretty, as far as statistical significance between on a poll that close, just like 10%, I'd say that they're essentially both really good buys. I think people feel that both of the synths are just great, and they've both moved up in my book personally. I am a sound-oriented individual. I am not a tactile person, and I'm not a visual person. And so for that, a lot of the times, if the software is good and sounds really good, it's hard for me to argue with the software. I would be interested in GeForce's like OBXA or OB8. That would probably be the sort of optimal, where it would be like having the Matrix 6 Curtis sound, because the OBX has a different sound set of filter chips in it, so it's just going to sound different. It's got a sharper, more precise, honestly more Roland type sound to it. But I mean, as far as I'm obsessed with vintage gear, but that doesn't mean that I would recommend that most people should go down the rabbit hole the way I have. I think it's probably best to, use VSTs when you can, because they're so reasonable. If you're trying to make music, I think hardware is more for if you're playing live, or if you're just a very tactile person. And then that's where I sometimes think vintage gear can be just as good or better than the modern stuff. That's just my opinion. So yeah, love expression pedals, Gingy. Let's see. Gingy says a Behringer MS1 is a great alternative to the Mini Moog. No comments on Behringer. I'm not going to say anything. It's been a contentious issue in the community recently. Westbeth Kid, welcome to the stream. Yeah, I really want one of those guys. The Alesis HR16. Definitely. Walter says, you don't own vintage gear. You're a warden. It's a responsibility. Yes, that's true. You're sort of like a shepherd and you have it for a time and then you set it free to somebody else. Decisive Koala says, I have the M6 and the 3P, but they both have different stakes. So anyone trying to decide, I recommend getting both. Yeah. Decisive, which way did you vote? I'm just curious. Dubstation says, wait, you don't recommend a studio full of vintage synths? I need to reevaluate my life. Yeah, I wouldn't say that that's the path I would recommend for most people most of the time. I think it's awesome. You know, it's great to have I'm the luckiest guy in the world to have all of this gear, but I don't know that it's necessarily. Oh, you didn't vote. That's funny. Yeah. HR16 for sale. Real nice. 200 for scum. I might take that off of you, Nick. I'm trying not to spend too much money on gear right now. Just got a new synth. It's just off camera here. You guys can't see it. Got to get it working before I can have it on the stream, of course. But really excited for this one coming up. Yeah, no comment on the UBXA. Vanish says, I own 18 vintage synths. It's absurd. Yeah, it is kind of the nature of the things. Like, as soon as you buy one synth, like, you don't meet that many people who are actually good at being like, yeah, I only have like 2 synths. It always seems to be a spiraling addiction. Decisive says, probably lean towards the 3P as a workhorse and the M6 as a specialty tool. That's a great way to describe it, I think so. Walter says, as a gigging musicians, taking out an older piece of gear for second board duty is a pleasure. Yeah, that's awesome. And I love that you're out there playing music. That's always my goal, is to get people actually making music and playing music. And that's why I do this channel. I am lucky enough to have the opportunity to, what did you say, Walter? Warden this gear for a time. But I really just want to see people making music, and so a lot of the stuff that I do on the channel as far as the products so far, there's more coming. The idea there is to get people making music for cheap. You know, my drum sample is $10. I think that's super reasonable nowadays. So Westbeth Kid, Scum is our community. Welcome to the Scum community. You're Scum now too. I don't even really know where it came from, but basically, people started saying when I was running events in Florida, they were like, when's the next Scum night? And people call me Scum Daddy. And that's just been something that stuck to me for a while. My version of it is that if you're scum, you don't look down on anybody. And that's my philosophy. I'm not here to make anybody feel bad. I don't want anybody shaming people in this space. And that's what Scum means to me. And that's our community that we have here. So yeah, thank you very much, Decisive. I appreciate that. We need to have some love for the Renaissance that Behringer has helped with. I'm very happy. I want as much reasonable gear as possible for people. There's a lot about Behringer that is, I just don't know what my opinion is, and so I'm not going to offer it. You know, I'm not one of those people who's quick to have a reactive opinion. I think there's pros and cons. I think there's things that they do that are obviously not great. That's probably true of a lot of synthesizer companies, but Behringer seems to attract quite a bit, and I've made the decision not to buy their stuff if I can. But I don't want to shame anybody. Like I said, I think that, you know, I think it's sort of a matter of economics too. Like, I'm lucky enough to make money off of music and to make money off this YouTube channel from the ad revenue. Very little, by the way, but I do make some, so I can sort of justify it to an extent. I think when it comes to beginner musicians, or basically just anybody who can't, I am so privileged and lucky where I'm at in life and where I'm at in the world, right? That I can make a sort of an ethical, like, hey, I just want to not, it's also just that they don't make anything that I'm particularly interested in. Like if I didn't have a CS70M, I might go with their CS80 clone if it ever came out, right? But yeah, I just don't believe in synth shaming, or shaming anybody for anything. I don't care what, genitals you're into or what your favorite music is or whatever. As long as you're not shaming anybody else, I don't give a fuck, And I don't know why that isn't everybody's opinion. I'm so myopic in that way where I'm just like, how can anybody not believe that? That just seems so foundational. But yet here we are. We're in this timeline, and there's a lot of people who are like that. Yeah, I mean, the thing is I'm less concerned about, like, when they remake a synthesizer that no one else is making, I'm like, okay with that. So for instance, the Behringer Monopoly, right? Korg has refused to make a Monopoly for whatever reason. That's on them. If Behringer wants to remake it so that people can have that, great. I'm not really against that. I think it's more when they copy modern products, or like in the Eurorack space, or even just like, Arturia and Moog, when they deliberately try to basically copy a product exactly and then sell it for cheap. I think that is ethically not good, because they didn't take the risk, the money it cost to try that out. They just get to benefit from some other company's risk and make money off of that. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Dubstation. Behringer stealing ideals and designs from my friends. Can't vibe with that. That's my thing. I can't vibe with that either. I'm not going to blame the customer for that, right? I'm going to blame Behringer for that. So anybody who's got a Behringer synth, you're welcome on this channel. I will never say anything negative about that. And I love that you're making music with that stuff. I'm glad that you've got it and you're making music. And I love that you were able to get it for cheap. That's good. I just wish that company, they could change it all now. They could change their reputation tomorrow. It wouldn't happen tomorrow, but they could just make a choice to not do that type of thing anymore. Let the synths that they've done and, the Eurorack modules and everything, sell those out, and then just don't do that anymore. And the world it would just be better that way. And it would be, at that point, I could, with no throat clearing, fully support Behringer and be like, hey, I'm happy that there's, the democratization of gear, as they like to say, or whatever. So that's my opinion. Rich says, Matrix Brute Noir will be back in stock this month. You've heard it here first. Yeah. Let's see. Westbeth sold a Matrix 6 for $300 because your girlfriend wanted to go on a trip. Why is this always happening to me? Yeah. Zacy, you've got expensive taste. That's costly gear. And I'm snobby, but that's snobby even for me. Yeah, I don't know. That's something. Anyways, guys, I think that's probably a good enough place to leave it here. So I love everybody who's here tonight. Thank you for hanging out with me. We'll be back next week, maybe with a new synth, maybe not. We'll have to see. It depends. But thank you so much for everybody for hanging out. Every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, we're doing this. And you guys are the best. I'm so glad to have you part of my scum family. Welcome the new people. And yeah, this would be just a thing. And, shout outs to Thinking With Your Junk. So love and light, bitches. I'm out.